When we went to her with this project, what was so interesting about her is, I said to her, Pamela, I have no other skills. I have nothing else to offer you. I think I could make a film. Would you want that? Is that something you would want? And, the body camera footage, we talked about it. And I also said, there's some really terrible, hard things to watch in there. What do you want? And she was like, no, make a film. She was like, no, she basically wanted the world to know. She said, I want the world to know what happened to my baby.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, the violent actions of a disgruntled neighbor place a Florida law into question in director Geeta Gandbhir's documentary, The Perfect Neighbor, which was screened as part of the DGA's documentary series. Told mostly through police body cam footage, the film uses the shooting of a beloved mother of four as a case study to examine Florida's controversial stand your ground laws, revealing the consequences that can occur when individuals feel emboldened by the law to act on their fear and prejudice. In addition to The Perfect Neighbor, Gandbhir's other directorial credits include the feature documentaries Lowndes County and the Road to Black Power, Hungry to Learn, and I Am Evidence, and episodes of the documentary series Katrina, Come Hell and High Water, Black and Missing, and Why We Hate. Following the documentary series screening of the film at the DGA Theater in New York, Gandbhir spoke with director Yance Ford about filming The Perfect Neighbor. Listen on for their conversation.
There are so many things that we could talk about with this film. There's so much. I think maybe we should start with your choice to use body cam footage to tell the entire story. It's a stroke of genius. It's genius.
Thank you. And thank you to you all for being here tonight. I know the film actually premieres tomorrow on Netflix, so to have people in the audience is like, I cannot tell you how meaningful that is for myself and my team. So Ajika, the backstory is that Ajika Owens was a family friend. So that's how we got involved in the case. She was very close to two relatives of mine and my producer, Nakan Kwantu, who is also, as young people say, my life partner. So we actually, when this happened, we were immediately notified and we were on the ground trying to help support the family in whatever way we could. And because we work in media, we were sort of tasked with being the media liaison, keeping the story alive in the news, because we didn't know if Susan was going to walk. With stand your ground laws being what they are, with the Trayvon Martin case as a precedent, there was sort of concerns about that. Then about 2 months later, the lawyers, Ben Crump came on board. He's a very well-known civil rights attorney, and he came on board, and they did a FOIA request. To the police department, the Marion County Sheriff's Department, and all the material pertaining to the case was released, which was everything you saw in the film. And it was sent to us, myself, and Nakan Kwantu. Nakan, can you stand up just so this is Nakan. So it was released to us, and we were asked to look through it to see if there was anything that would be useful to the media. And it came in a complete jumble. It was a mess. It was just on this thumb drive. And I used to be an editor, which Yancy, well.
I know. Yep.
So I was an editor for a number of years. And so we were, again, Nakan and I sort of obsessively pieced it together. Again, there was body camera footage, ring camera footage, cell phone footage, dash cam footage, detective interviews, 911 calls, et cetera. And we wanted to figure out the chronology. It was both grief work in some ways, like for us, but also, we felt really compelled. We couldn't understand how this could have happened. How does someone pick up a gun and shoot their neighbor through a locked metal door over, such a trivial dispute, kids playing nearby in a yard where they are allowed to be. Right. And so when we pieced it all together, finally, it took a couple of weeks of late nights, but we realized that the footage went back 2 years. And that's when the idea of a film was born. When really I thought there's Nakan too. Nakan was like, Geeta, there's a story we can tell with this that's so much bigger. And that's when we embarked.
So the fact that the footage goes back 2 years makes me think about the question of premeditation, right? And how we've seen in similar cases, there is the dialogue about the superhuman strength of the Black person on the other side of the door, and the house that is like shaking, with the force of her banging on the door, and Susan trembling and not knowing what to do. There is a pattern about, in the way that she talks, and the way that she talks about the children when the police come. And when you so talk about the other things that you noticed as you went through the footage.
Sure, absolutely. I think what the footage revealed, and first of all, we felt collectively that the body camera footage in some ways is undeniable to an audience. We're not there. We were not on the ground directing things or, telling people what to say. There's no reporter's camera that people are responding to. They're, of course, responding to the police, and Susan treats the police like she is their client, and they are there to serve her. And the rest of the community, which is, again, a multiracial community, has a different relationship with the police, where, again, there is less trust. And, they feel that they have to be excessively polite to the police, et cetera, because, the police are an invading force to them. But I think that still, even within that, we really felt like the audience would understand, as we did, that you're seeing what happened in real time. You're seeing people behave as they would, again, with no camera there. Right. So that was part of it. And what you see in that is, again, the interactions of Susan weaponizing her privilege, her white privilege, and her and victimhood, weirdly, and she keeps trying to weaponize the police against the community. And ultimately, and you see the community as they are, this beautiful, you often only see when it comes to these types of tragedies, shootings that happen almost every week, right? And we are almost numb to them, unfortunately. But you usually only see the aftermath. You see the grieving family, you maybe see the funeral, yep. Maybe there's the day of, but you don't get to see the community as they were before. And to me, this beautiful little community is really the best of what we are in society, a multiracial community, living together, raising children together, a strong social network. Again, you have the mother who comes out and says, when the cop asks her, she says, oh, these kids, they're all mine. They're all mine, exactly. And then the father who's like, oh, I look out for all of them like they're my own. Yes. And then you have the kids themselves who are so secure, who are so, again, they are playing in the street freely. They are precocious and smart and confident and clearly very loved, and they go up to the police themselves and say things like, we're only 11, and they have their own point of view. Yeah. So I think being able to recreate that community for the audience was so important, because we are, as you said, so often criminalized when something terrible happens to us, and our children are adultified. So I think that was something we felt that, again, we wanted audiences to come to their own conclusions, but we felt that was really powerful. And we are doc filmmakers, so of course there was also Susan's side of the story. It was just as important to let her, she has a lot of time with in the footage because she's the one who calls the police. Yeah. But we wanted to paint a 360 picture for the audience and let them come to their own conclusions.
One of the brilliant things you do with real time in the film is that second interrogation. That second interrogation it's just, I don't even know how to describe it. The deference and the politeness and the degree to which they reason with Susan. I haven't timed it, but I was tempted to time it. I was like, when are you just going to pick this lady up and put her in handcuffs and drag her down to the jail? Because that's what would have happened to you, me, or someone else who looked like us, right? So there was this undercurrent of, but they're being cordial. to Susan. I mean, they're also being cordial to the kids and cordial to the adults in the community, but they're being cordial in a way to Susan that doesn't make sense to me, because they're also privately calling her psycho. So I wonder if you could talk about how the behavior of the police, how you made sense of that, because it's really well sort of strung out through the course of the film.
I think what we see with the police, and it's really interesting because I think depending on who you are in our society, and you know, the film sort of meets you where you are, right? So we have had people say to us, "Oh, the police were great. Like the police they did their job so well. They were kind. They were polite." And then, I think other people have said the police completely failed, and they failed that community. And I think what you see through the film, and Nakan has said this, is the police, again, are polite. There's a politeness, but our bar for the police is so low. It is so low that we take politeness as them doing their jobs, when in fact they actually did not protect that community. So they labeled Susan. Again, Susan, I think, was the person they had a client, service relationship with Susan, and she's the person, again, she kept calling, but I think the way that they treated her, as you saw, and it went on throughout, was as if she was just a nuisance, right? She was just a nuisance. She was this harmless but kind of crazy person who they had to deal with. And eventually they ignored her. They never saw her as a threat. And her access to weapons and her being emboldened by stand your ground absolutely made her a threat. And after the third time she called, we've had other law enforcement come to us after screenings and say, after the third time she called, she should have been flagged. And she should have gotten a warning about her behavior. And the community should have been told that they could have filed charges against her, harassment charges. They could have gotten restraining orders. She was using hate speech against children. She was making threats. She was filming them. She was yelling at them. She threw things at them. She brandished a gun. But I think the response of the police to the community was like, "Oh, just don't go over there. Just work around her."
And that's the thing that I find remarkable. She brandished a gun. She showed them a gun. That would have precipitated a different response for a different person. And I don't know if the police are aware enough of their own behavior to realize what a failure that is. Because once she's brandished a gun, there's a weapon in the home in a volatile situation.
100%. But actually, to me, I think one of the reasons there's a scene in the film, which is not connected to the case directly, but where she, the police come to her house, an officer comes to the house because she's rammed her truck repeatedly into the gate of a tow pound and damaged the property of the person. At that point, wouldn't you wonder, like, this person is erratic. This person calls the police all the time and is displaying unstable behavior. We left that scene in so the audience could slowly see the buildup. And part of this too, for me, I come from a narrative background. I wanted this to play for you all like a narrative film. I wanted it you to feel sort of this tension and the slow buildup. And the police, without meaning to, functioned almost like multicam. We were able to piece it together in a way that we didn't require talking heads. But that scene, to me, it's like, after that, if this woman has called you so many times, wouldn't you think, and now she's actually committing what could be a crime. Wouldn't you think there would be a further look into her, and if her calls about the community were founded? But there wasn't. And that's her privilege. Again, as you said, had it been someone else, it would have been one of us, a person of color, it likely would have gone very differently. Yeah.
One of the things that the film also does, I think, is it allows children, a multiracial group of children, to be portrayed as children. It's so absolutely heartbreaking to watch Izzy and his brothers and sister, go through learning that their mother has died. But then it's also so beautiful to watch them at the funeral and see how surrounded by family they are and how literally enveloped in love that each of the kids are. And I don't think that people realize how seldom you see portrayals of children of color as vulnerable, as grieving, as loved, in ways that we do in this film. And when you see it, it's just like, it jumps out at you because it's so rare.
Thank you for that. No, thank you for that. That was really important to us. I think the children, one of the things that we saw in the body camera footage was the fact that the police unintentionally captured the humanity of the community. Again, they were just there again on multiple visits without meaning to. There were these moments, and police body camera footage is usually, it's a violent tool of the state, right? It's used to surveil, to criminalize, and to protect the police. When it comes to communities of color, right? It is not used to in any way serve us. But I think one of the things I wanted to do was subvert that in the body by using these moments that they captured where you see, the deep, the and wonderful and complex relationships of the community and the deep humanity. Obviously, when you cannot see those kids. And Soledad O'Brien, who's one of our executive producers, said that. She was like, you cannot, again, these children are the kiddiest kids, right? They are so clearly under 12, most of them that are, hanging around. And there are even teenagers there. Yeah. But the teenagers are actually also afraid of Susan. You hear some of their voices. One who says, I wouldn't go up if my basketball went up there. We were scared we'd get shot. So she was terrorizing a neighborhood, a whole community. But I think, again, it was so important to see that beauty, because I feel like this film it's a microcosm of our world, and it encompasses the worst of what we can be, but also the best. And so I really wanted to give that community its due.
Talk about her mom, if you would, Pamela, who's remarkable, and who is another Black woman called upon to be insanely articulate and composed, and to act as a spokesperson with the press in a time when she should simply be allowed to be grieving the loss of her daughter. Can you talk about her as a character? Because she emerges first as a voice from the phone, and then we see her, and she's like, it's like she's grown up from the ground. That's how solid she feels. She feels like she's suffering to me. I can see it on her face. But she also feels very unmovable in a way that I think is particular to Black women in the United States.
So Pamela, we say our team. I also want to point out Sam Bisbee, who's here with us. He's also a producer on the film. He's sitting there. But this is the team who could be here with me. But Pamela is honestly one of the bravest people that I know, and I think we collectively know. She is a young mother. She had Ajika when she was 18. They're almost like sisters. They were so close. But when this happened, I went to her, when we figured out what we had with the body cam footage. She was still in the midst of her grief, but you're absolutely right. She had to step into this role. That was so unfair. That was so unfair to her, because there was a question of justice. Like, would there be justice for her daughter? Right. So she had to turn into a spokesperson, as happens to so many, as you mentioned before. Right. But when we went to her with this project, what was so interesting about her is, I said to her, Pamela, I have no other skills. I have nothing else to offer you. I think I could make a film. Would you want that? Is that something you would want? The body camera footage, we talked about it. And I also said, there's some really terrible, hard things to watch in there. What do you want? And she was like, no, make a film. She was like, no, she basically wanted the world to know. She said, I want the world to know what happened to my baby. And she takes a lot of strength from Mamie Till, who is Emmett Till's mother, who, if you all may remember, who basically, when her son was brutally lynched, in the beginning of the freedom struggle, she insisted on an open casket funeral and told the press to come in and take pictures of her son, because she wanted the world to know what happened to her son. And so Pamela is of the same mind. She was like, the world needs to know, because if they don't, these things will continue to be perpetrated in the dark. We have to shine light on it. I know it's painful. It's hard, obviously, but we think about George Floyd. That video sparked a movement, and she wants much more. For her daughter's legacy. She doesn't want her daughter's death to be in vain. She wants to she's working towards gun reform. She's working towards repealing these laws like Stand Your Ground and helping other families. So this is this has been her journey. And we could not admire her more.
Yeah. Are there questions in the audience?
Sure. So the question was, how are the children doing, basically, right? So, and thank you for that comment. That moment was hard to put in, but we really feel that people need to see the immediate aftermath of gun violence, right? This is what it looks like, and to be moved to make change. But so the children, it's been 2.5 years, right, since they lost their mother. Pamela would tell you if she was here, they are the bravest people she knows, because yet they get up every day, they go to school, they do what they're supposed to, but their hearts are broken. Like it's up and down. There are good days and bad days. They have a lot of love. They have a loving grandmother. They have a community. They have a lot of people who stepped in, but they miss their mother, and it will be a journey, and it's something they will carry with them. He is good at what he does. I will tell you that. When he showed up, that was something that we were all very concerned about, because the kids did feel that the children, the two older boys, one, as you heard, felt he didn't know how to save his mother. So he felt responsible. And the younger one, who went and got her when Susan said, go get your mother, he feels it was his fault. And so for Sharpton, that was such a necessary sentiment for them to hear.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So what's very interesting is, and we are careful about what we say about this, because a lot of people we often hear this question about mental illness or, medical issues. There was nothing that factored into the case. They, of course, had her assessed. They did a full psychiatric assessment of her, because she claimed that she had PTSD from a traumatic childhood. They didn't find it factored in. And two, we particularly want to be very careful about, the majority. So many people, have some form of mental illness and harm no one, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to be very careful about not stigmatizing, about that stigma that, again, immediately it must be mental illness, because as the judge, I think, said, she did it more out of anger and fear. And if you watch what happens in the film, you see the police eventually start to ignore her, and she complains that they don't show up. And what we believe is that she decided to take matters into her own hands. She researched Stand Your Ground, and she made a decision.
Yes, sir, on the right.
Why is she like this? Why is she like this? If we knew that, sir, I'm so sorry. We don't really know. She tells many stories. Like she told she was a doctor, or she is a doctor. We can't fact check any of it. There was one point she was a singer. She had many lives that she spun, but we don't know what's true. It's very hard to know. But what I can tell you, she moved into that community, unfortunately, around the same time that Ajika moved in, very shortly after. And Ajika moved in because our relative, Kimberly Robinson Jones, had lived in that house before and said, you can take, basically she was like, this is a great community. You're a single mom, come move here, and your kids can play in the street, like all the things. And Susan moved in shortly after.
Orange sweatshirt is our last question.
It's public domain. It's public record, I should say. So Florida has the Sunshine State laws, and like I said, they did a FOIA request. They used the Freedom of Information Act to procure the material, which I think you have to do it within a certain amount of time. But interesting, Florida, which in so many other ways, it's like we could say a lot of things about Florida, but the one interesting piece is that this is something that they are actually fairly good about. I mean, again, I think the police also, this is me speaking here, but the police also probably felt that they did not look bad in this footage. And so they might have fought not to share it, or oops, they might have lost some of it. Who knows? But I think this material was easy. It was fairly easy for them to acquire because the case was very egregious. And they, again, I think they may have felt they didn't do anything terrible. So,
folks, sorry, one more question. Last question.
The detective interviews were audio only, and we wanted to, but we really wanted to create these sort of interstitials, because the body camera footage can be relentless, right? And we felt that our audience needed some breathing space and some context. Also, there is more of Susan than there is of Ajika, because Susan again calls the police. So she's the one who brings them to the neighborhood. And so there's always an interaction with her, and the other community members you may see, you may not see. And so we felt that really we wanted to use them as a choir of voices, so that there was sort of equity between the sort of two sides that you see, in this film. There's, and the adversarial relationship. So, and we shot we filmed the material, like the drone and the B-roll that you saw was ours. We wanted to create an atmosphere of the neighborhood. And to me, I'm going to say this to you guys, for me, there's a couple things, like I think when we watched this, Nikan spoke about the film Paranormal Activity. Like he was like, it feels, or like some of these films that are like almost horror films, or are horror films, Blair Witch Project. Also, and more recently, the series Adolescence, right, which came out after our film, but there's a similar, stylization that we wanted the audience, like I said, to be on this immersive, propulsive journey with us, and not to beat them over the head with, the advocacy of it. We wanted the film to be a Trojan horse for the messaging. And we believe like I said, we trust our audience. We believe that they will understand what is happening and sort of go along on the ride with us.
So the film is launching on...
So it's out tomorrow. The last thing I would say was, I will say something very quickly. If Pamela were here, she would say that Ajika was a bright young woman with big dreams. She was an amazing mother, but she also, had a lot of plans for her own life. And she wanted to be an entrepreneur, and she would call her mother every day with new ideas. And her mother would laugh at her, as mothers often do, because some of her ideas were outrageous. But she used to say to her mother, just wait. One of the last conversations Pam told me that she said, you laugh at me, but just wait. One day the whole world is going to know my name. And so for us, that's what we're left with. And Pam has created a fund called Standing in the Gap Fund, and you can find it online, standinginthegapfund.org, to help other families that are impacted by this kind of violence. And she asks every audience to please remember her daughter's name, and she says you are now part of her legacy. So to just carry that forward. And if you tell a friend, tell a friend to watch this, maybe we can start a groundswell around this issue. And it's a Sisyphus-like endeavor to try to change gun laws, but we must try. So.
The Perfect Neighbor.
Thank you all so much.
Geeta Gandbhir.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.